One last quick caveat before we go forward. I build all my websites on WordPress. I've mentioned Webflow in this course. I've also mentioned Square and Wix, although I highly, highly suggest that you don't use those. WordPress and Webflow right now are the two most common CMSs for serious agency owners. Almost everybody is going to use WordPress, but if you're using Webflow, I want you to know that these lessons still apply, but there's probably going to be different plugins that you can use. And I'll explain what that means going forward. Just know that even if you are using Webflow, everything I'm about to teach you still applies. You're probably just going to have to find a different application instead of Yoast. And you'll have to do that research on your own. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to assist. Let's talk about content. There's two examples that we're going to use. We're going to use an example on my personal website on timstodds.com. You can see here that I rank number 1 for how to monetize a personal brand. So I'll hit enter and search it just so you guys can see that. In addition, we're going to analyze a piece of content that we wrote on the Stodsy site, which we actually went over in the site structure lesson. And that is emergency room marketing. So again, I'll hit enter just so that you guys can see this is live. Add. So these are paid ads. And then you can see the Stodsy has the number 1 spot right above healthcare success. So how do you do this? We know that site structure is important. Next, we want to formulate our content in a very specific way so that it meets all 3 of the criteria. Let's go over those criteria again one more time. We need to appeal to the user. We need to appeal to the search engine. And we also need to convert the user to take action by following the AIDA formula: attention, interest, desire, action. We're going to really go through that over and over again. So let's start with this one: how to monetize a personal brand. This is the back end of timstodds.com. This is the actual article. You can see all of the content is here. All of this content is what I personally wrote to rank for this particular keyword. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look here. We're going to look at this plugin called Yoast SEO. I want everybody to know that Yoast SEO is not the end all be all. There are many instances in which it doesn't make sense to completely stay very, very strict with getting the light green, we call it. And you'll see what that means momentarily. You can see here that this light is orange. And that might not make sense to you right now, but believe me, it will. So there are some times when following all of these guidelines to an absolute T doesn't make sense, because you don't want to sacrifice the readability for possibly ranking a little bit higher. Because if your article is not readable anyway, then you're going to drop in rankings. Sometimes it might not make sense to direct match the keyword in the slug. Maybe the keyword you're going for is a little bit long, and for the slug, there's an abbreviated version of that. That could be an instance. Point is, Yoast SEO is a guideline. It'll give you the best practice. And if you follow these particular guidelines and these particular criteria as best as you can every single time you write an article, guaranteed, absolutely 100%, you will see results leaps and bounds above what you would see without doing them. So what are the criteria for your content? Well, this is why Yoast SEO is so valuable, because it basically maps it out for you. So if you go to Yoast, Yoast is always at the bottom of your content. So this is my content, and we'll see the plugin. Right here, this SEO analysis bar. These are the green dots. This basically means that these are the criteria that I matched perfectly. These are the red dots, which means I didn't do a good job here. And I think we'll probably even find some instances where I might be able to turn these green, and then that'll make the whole dot green. The whole article will be green lit, as we call it, for hitting the best practices that Yoast SEO tells us to do. So let's go through these one by one. The first thing we want to do, the absolute first thing that we want to do, is we want to designate a keyword to each article. This is so important, and it's so simple, but it's just lack of organization, which is why people fall victim to this. A lot of times the general consensus is just write the best content and over time you'll rank. I guess that's probably true, but if your goal is to get money out of your website, is to get phone calls, to get leads, even to sell product, if your goal is to get agency clients, you want to be as deliberate and methodical as you possibly can with your content. So to do this, we create a content calendar, and I will bring you through the content calendar after we go over Yoast. The point is, right here, you want to completely dedicate a keyword to an article. This keyword is monetize a personal brand. So that's your focus keyword. That means that we are telling Google what this piece of content is about. Google needs to index your content. And maybe if the article is about monetizing a personal brand, but you didn't deliberately make the content about that, Google's not going to be sure why. It's not going to be sure what you're really getting at within your content. So this is great from a technical level, but it's also great from a strategic level, because as you do your keyword research and as you look at the different opportunities in content, you can keep track. You'll know, I already wrote an article about that subject. I don't need to write it again. You'll find an opportunity maybe for a secondary keyword where maybe it's, instead of monetize a personal brand, maybe it's how to monetize a personal brand, right? Technically, it's the same. It's a different keyword, but we can probably rank for that search term with this article. And if you find that opportunity, you can make slight adjustments instead of making and writing an entire new piece of content. All right, so we have a focus keyword. Then what do? We want to make sure we put the focus keyword in our title. Keep in mind, the title of your article is different than the title tag of your content. 9 times out of 10, I make my title of my article and my title tag the same exact thing. It's only different where you want to tell Google one thing, and let's say you want to have a different title for the article that you're going to post on social media because you think you have a real clickbaity headline and you can make it go viral. I don't really care about social media, so I just leave them the same. So this is one criteria. Monetize a personal brand. That is in my title of my article, and it's also my H1 tag, which technically is right here. This is just Yoast telling me, or telling Google, that we're going to make the SEO title, the H1 tag, the actual title of the article. And so this is fine. This is my title tag. So this is basically a snippet of what Google sees. And in addition, what the title tag really is it's the link that Google is going to display when they populate your article in the SERPs, in the search engine results page. Your title tag is 9 times out of 10 what is displayed on Google. So once again, we are literally spoon feeding Google what it is that our content is about. I could just as easily have made this title something like 7 strategies to help you grow a brand, which will be great for your personal life, right? That's probably a bad example, but you understand, I hope, what I'm getting at. Or I can specifically tell Google what this article is about. This article is about how to monetize a personal brand. We put that in the title tag. We spoon fed Google exactly what it is that we are trying to teach, that we're trying to educate the users who are interested in this particular search query. So that's one criteria. Key phrase in title. Let's look at this one. Key phrase in slug. Your slug is the URL after the root domain. So if we actually click on monetize a personal brand, if we actually click on the article right here, this is the slug. This is a single slug. Technically, if you wanted to, you could have parent and child pages where you could have another slug, and maybe this is like how to monetize a personal brand on social media. So it would be / social media, and then you could have like sub criteria of your parent page. I wouldn't recommend that. I have found through my own trial and error that you have a much better chance of ranking if you only have one level of pages. So keep everything as a parent page and put your keyword directly in the first slug. Okay, so we've matched that criteria. Monetize a personal brand is in the slug. Here we go. Image alt attributes. Your image has its own tag. If you ever wonder when you search for an image on Google, like images don't necessarily have words in them, right? You can't index the word. So how is it that Google knows what certain images are about? And the answer is through the alt tag. And the answer is to the alt tag. So if you click on the image and you see this little pencil come up, edit, you click on edit, and here's my alternative text. This is my alt tag. So I put my keyword in the alt tag, and here's a really good example where if we search this keyword, and we know I'm ranking number 1 within the all tab, if we click on images, here's the article as well. So if I were to click on this actual image, the image would pop up, and you can see here that here's a link to the article. This is great. This isn't most likely going to help you get clicks, but it's still just another signal to Google that this article is about this particular thing. Remember, with our content, we're taking every opportunity we can just to tell Google what it is that we're writing about. All right, here we go. Let's scroll back down to Yoast. Internal links. So an internal link is a link on a page on your website that links internally to another page on your website. So I'm pretty sure these internal links are important, and we're going to talk more about internal links in the next chapter, where we also talk about backlinks, because you have to think of your website as a series of doors and rooms, basically, or even a way to visualize it is pipes, and there is energy, almost there's authority, I should say, being passed through all of the links. So if this particular page is ranking number 1, and we have another link that goes internally to another page on the website, that signal is telling Google that, okay, there's a link from this page, which is very authoritative, to another page. So this other page must also be authoritative, or else it wouldn't be linked to. So you can see right here. Here's one of the internal links. This is a podcast that I did with a guy named Hamish McKenzie. He's the founder of Substack. And bam, you can see pretty clearly that it's a link internally to another page on the website. If your article is 1,200 words, I'd recommend try having 2 or 3 internal links. All right, let's look at another criteria, which is going to be outbound links. It's counterintuitive to think to yourself, why would I want to link out to another website when potentially what I could be doing is bringing a user onto my webpage through organic search and then having them leave by linking out to another site. I want you to not think of it that way, not live in scarcity complex, and instead think of it in the mindset, whereas if I'm providing the best resources for any search query, and even if that information links out to another site, the overall value that I am bringing forth and the result that I am going to get by providing just the best value possible is always going to be more than it would be if you were scared to share the resources, if you were scared to link out to other websites. If you approach your content by just providing the best content possible, in the long run, you're really going to get more results than you would have otherwise. So we want to see some outbound links, right? Where are some outbound links on the website? Okay, here you go. This is how Mark Manson monetizes his personal brand. So in another way, this is a signal. I'm talking about a personal brand, and I'm referencing people who have already built strong personal brands. So all I'm doing is continuing to establish my credibility and my authority through the Google search signals and through the algorithm. The text length, I recommend being at least 1,200 words. Recently, over the last year and a half, almost all of my content has been at least over 2,000 words. You'll see in some of my Stodzy content that it gets up to 3,000 words. I don't recommend writing content for the sake of making it long. Whatever you need to say it in as short as you possibly can. Don't fill your content up with fluff just because you think that there's some external reward in making it long. That's not the case. You want to make it valuable. With that being said, you're probably not going to rank for anything that's 500 words, really 800 words. A good rule of thumb that has worked for me is 1,200 words. And if you have more to say, keep saying it until you've written the best piece of content possible. Previously used key phrase. This is very important because a huge mistake people make, especially in agency sites, is they write about the same concepts over and over again with like different variations of it. And that's fine because your blog should always be providing credibility and providing authority to your readers. But the purpose of a content calendar is to make sure that every new piece of content you create has some kind of metric behind it. It serves some kind of purpose. There's some kind of potential reward that you can get from that content. And to do that, you want to cast your net as wide as possible. So every time you write a new piece of content, you should be trying to rank for a new specific keyword. And you never want to write a piece of content about the same keyword twice. Because if you do that, Google's going to get confused. And they're going to say, this website has 2 pages about the same exact concept. Which one is best? And it's not going to know. And a lot of times, neither of them get ranked. So this is a really, really important concept and an important thing to keep track of, because 2 or 3 years down the line, once you have a couple hundred articles on your website, it's going to get really, really difficult not to write content from the same keywords. So keep track of this and make sure everything that you write serves a purpose. Okay, key phrase density. This is less important now than it was. And there are even some SEOs that say the keyword density doesn't matter. I strongly disagree. I've done a ton of tests on this. I've written articles where the keyword was only in the title. I've written articles where the keyword was just in the very top of the article, within like the first sentence. And in almost every case, if you deliberately put the keyword in there at least 1% of the time, then that is ideal. So when I say 1%, let's imagine even 0.5%, right? Let's imagine it's a 1,000-word article. Well, if the keyword is in there 5 times, then 0.5% of the words are the keyword. Be deliberate about it and use variations of the keyword. It's fine to use synonyms. So for instance, if the keyword is monetize a personal brand and I put something like monetizing your personal Twitter account, those are, Google can figure out the relationships between the keywords, and they understand that it's synonyms. You're saying the same thing. You're just using different like specific keywords. That's fine too. Like I said, in my experience, deliberately putting the particular keyword in there at least 0.5% of the time has been very beneficial to me, and I highly recommend you do that. And that's it. So what haven't we covered? Well, I haven't put in the meta description, and I probably should. I'm not going to because the article is already ranking number 1, so I don't want to screw it up. But you want to make sure you have the keyword in the meta description. And again, the meta description is what you see underneath your title tag. So this is your meta tag, and then that content underneath is what the description is. This is less relevant than it ever has been. If you don't have a meta description in there, Google is basically going to take some content that they think is relevant. In this case, it took, well, I'm not sure what it took. Actually, it formulated its own meta description based on what it has read more or less in the article. So I would recommend putting in your meta description and making sure your keyword is in there. In this case, I didn't do it. When we look at the next article, I'll show you the difference because I don't want to mess it up. All right, where am I? Okay, meta description length. It's about 160 characters, I think, and you'll see this turn green once you write 160 characters in there. And the SEO title width, in this case, mine is too long, but wait, I think I fixed it. Yeah, it's still too long. So you can see here, when you look at the article, it goes a little bit further than Google has space for. So the title tag is how to monetize a personal brand, seven simple strategies to put something. And it is to put cash in your pocket. I don't mind going longer than it needs to be. What's important is that you always have the keyword at the very front of the title tag. So even if the title tag is longer than can fit in the allocated display, it's okay because your keyword is always in the front. This is basically how I write all of my title tags. I put the keyword right at the front, and then I put a colon. I like to put a number in there because numbers make it easy to click on. People like seeing numbers. It catches our eye. And then key phrase in the introduction. This one actually isn't accurate because what it wants is that your key phrase is in the very first thing that you say. And so if you hit enter, Yoast will basically think that it's not in the introduction, but it really is. You want your keyword to be in the first 100 words, even the first 50 words. If you can do that, if you read any of Brian Dean's work on Backlinko, he basically puts the keyword in the first sentence every time. But you can see here, are you wanting to monetize your personal brand? And it's in there.